Welcome everybody to this wonderful event today, listening to the statement from the heart. Auntie Joy Wandon Murphy was going to give the welcome to country. She may have been delayed, she has a long way to come, but she's definitely coming. So we always begin with a welcome to country or an acknowledgement of country, and so I'll now ask Auntie Helen Bernards if she would give the acknowledgement of country, and then when Auntie Joy arrives, she can give us another message. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, thank you. You've just heard from Helen that Auntie Joy will be giving the welcome. I can do the acknowledgement. I do come from another country in regards to my Aboriginal links, and that's up in North Queensland, where I am known as a Birri-Gubba woman from the Bindle group. That's up in Townsville Way. Further down the coast in Queensland, I have direct family ties to the Cherbourg Aboriginal Mission, and also from Brisbane, where I was born, I'm directly related into the Waka Waka mob. I have been down here in Victoria and living with the Kuris, the Victorian Aboriginal peoples, for the last 48 years, and I have permission from the elders to be able to give you this acknowledgement to you. I would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first people and traditional owners and custodians of this land. I pay my respects to the ancestors of this country, the elders, the knowledge holders, the leaders, past, present and emerging. I extend the respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are with us here today. And in this beautiful church, I'd like to acknowledge the local traditional owners, the Wiradjuri peoples, and the peoples of the Kulin Nations. Thank you.
Well, today we come together to celebrate the United Nations World Interfaith Harmony Week. And it was in September of 2010 that His Majesty King Abdullah of Jordan proposed this World Interfaith Harmony Week at the General Assembly in New York. And it was just under a month later that it was adopted by the United Nations. And so since then, the Interfaith Centre of Melbourne and many organisations in Australia have held events to celebrate world harmony. And it all started being based on the pioneering work of the Common Word Initiative. And this started in 2007, and it called for Muslim and Christian leaders to engage in dialogue based on two common fundamental religious commandments: love of God and love of the neighbour, without compromising any of their own religious beliefs. The two commandments are extended by adding love of God, love of the good, and love of the neighbour. And this formula includes all people of goodwill. It includes those of other faiths and those of no faith. And so since holding the inaugural World Interfaith event in 2011, the Interfaith Centre has continued this tradition of celebrating it every February. For 2019, our focal point is on listening to our neighbours, the First Nations people, the First Nations peoples, many, many diverse nations within the First Nations peoples, the oldest continuous living culture on the planet. And we are in a most beautiful place to listen and reflect here at St. Oswald's Anglican Church, with Reverend Glenn Loughrey's Indigenous artwork surrounding us, and the Reconciliation Garden next to the church. This afternoon we begin our listening as Auntie Helen Bernards reads the Statement from the Heart, composed at the First Nations National Constitutional Convention at Uluru in May 2017. And following Auntie Helen's reading, we will have a few minutes of quiet reflection with Megan Kenny on flute. Thank you, Auntie Helen.
This is the Uluru Statement from the Heart. We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky to make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands and lands, and possessed it under our own laws and customs. This our ancestors did, according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law from time immortal, and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion, the ancestral tie between the land, or Mother Nature, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom, remained attached thereto, and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished and coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise that peoples possessed a land for 60 millennium and this sacred link disappears from world history in merely the last 200 years? With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionately, we're the most incarcerated people on this planet. We are not innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. These dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of our problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. They will walk in two worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarand is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations of a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarand Commission to supervise a process of agreement-making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. In 1967, we were counted. In 2017, we seek to be heard. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country of Australia. We invite you here, to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Thank you.
Yawan Nadu Glen Loughrey, Darabundinya Bad Wiradjuri. My name is Glen Loughrey, and I am proud to be Wiradjuri. It's wonderful to be here, and I too acknowledge the land on which we meet, the sovereign land that has given birth to and flourished and nourished the peoples of the Kulin nations. I acknowledge elders past, present and future, and those elders who are visiting with us today from many places around the world. I particularly thank and acknowledge Auntie Helen and appreciate her words and her thoughts and her presence with us today. What we've come forward today here is to listen to the words of the statement of the heart, so beautifully read to us by Auntie Helen. It is one thing to know those words, it's another thing to hear them, and it's another thing to reflect upon them and place it into our being in the places in which we live. There is a word in our language, Nagara, which means to listen, hear, and think. It means to listen so that you become a part of what is being said, so that what is being said becomes a part of you. It is not an intellectual practice, it's a spiritual practice. and you hear the deep truth of the statement, and you hear the deep truth as it connects with your deep truth. And as you hear it, you begin to unpack it. And we are to unpack the statement of the heart, not again as simply a constitutional statement or a statement of truth, but a spiritual statement that invites us all to join, to become one, and to work, to live, and to be united. United doesn't mean to be the same, but it does mean to be of the same mind. Our practices may be different. Our understanding of the world may be different. But we can listen, hear, and reflect in a way that holds us all together and moves us, changes us, disrupts us, shifts us. One of the wonderful things about this statement is it was possibly the very, very first time that the Aboriginal people from many nations came together with one mind. Non-Aboriginal people are not able to really understand the significance of what happened at Uluru. Every Aboriginal nation is independent and autonomous. We make our own decisions. We have our own cultures. It's attached to our land, our language, our ceremony, our ritual. And to move from that to a place where we can, in a sense, universally as an First Nations group, put together a statement like this. We worked for 12 months to do that. It was the most amazing commitment by Aboriginal people to let go of their own particular views of the world, to come together and to create a statement that spoke for them all. It's not happened before, and I fear that it may never happen again, because it asks us to listen and to make those same challenging decisions amongst ourselves. How do we give up our privilege? How do we give up our entitlement born out of the stolen land and the stolen cultures of other people? How do we give up those things that define us so that other people can share in them? It's also interesting today that we're here at this moment to talk about this, because on February the 14th, for the first time, the Ainu people of Japan were recognised as the indigenous people by the Japanese government. First time. We are living in a time where indigenous people are struggling for their voice and their identity. We ask that what we ask of Australian people is that you listen to us. You hear our statement. You feel our earnestness and our pain. You join us. It is so amazing for me to stand here and look at so many different cultures, so many different faith cultures. That's wonderful. Let us harness what we have as we listen, hear and reflect with Ngara and begin to move this statement from a wonderful statement to a wonderful reality. From a wonderful statement to a wonderful reality. There's a painting on the end down there which is called The Road to Emmaus, and there are 3 dots on it. The first is 67. The second is the Rudd's apology to stolen generation. The third is the statement of the convention at Uluru. But you notice the road hasn't stopped there. We're still on a road looking for places to belong with each other. May this be the beginning of us putting a stop to that road and of us joining together as one people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glenn. And we're very grateful to Reverend Glenn Loughrey for holding this event today in his beautiful church. Thank you. There is a great momentum of support for the statement from the heart from many non-Indigenous Australians. And within our religious and spiritual communities, support is growing. We see this in small projects undertaken to more advanced projects. Some of our communities are quite new, and so there is just a beginning. And we're very pleased to have with us today religious and community leaders who represent 6 religious traditions.
Good afternoon. I would also like to recognise the original custodians of this land and pay respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I'm particularly pleased to be here to talk on behalf of the Jewish Community Council of Victoria to support the Uluru Statement from the Heart. I know I can say this with confidence as the Jewish Community Council, together with the Council of Christians and Jews, co-sponsored a walk by the Jewish community last December to support the Aboriginal community for a continuing voice in Parliament to advise on any proposed legislation that would affect Australia's First People. The walk that was first proposed by Rabbi Gersh Lazaro, Senior Rabbi at Temple Beth Israel, was to give back to the Aboriginal community for the advocacy that Aboriginal elder William Cooper expressed in his protests to the German consulate on the treatment of Jews after Kristallnacht in 1938. That was the beginning of the end for millions of Jews doomed to die under Nazi rule. The protest walk and petition was at a time when our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders were denied citizenship and was subjected to appalling physical, social and economic hardships. The walk was organised by Rabbi Lazaro, Abe Schwartz, who is here, and myself, to coincide with William Cooper's walk from his home in Footscray to the city on December the 6th, 80 years earlier. During the planning, the Uluru Statement was released so the walk morphed into a support for Aboriginal recognition within the Australian Constitution, the eventual signing of a treatment, and of course a significant voice in Parliament. December the 6th was a boiling hot day over 37 degrees, but over 600 members of the community turned up, together with members of the Aboriginal and wider community, to walk from Flagstaff Gardens through the city, past the site of the German consulate, across the Yarra and then to Peppercorn Lawns, via the Aboriginal burial stone at the domain under which hundreds of Aboriginal bones were retrieved from overseas museums, to a smoking ceremony to welcome the crowd. The group that occurred there listened to Aboriginal and Jewish speakers, including Jennifer Hubbard, President of the JCCV, who's also here today, talking about the terrible massacres of Aborigines and the outrageous conditions that they have had to endure for over 200 years. For those who love spiritual confluences, this coincided with the 5th night of Hanukkah, and our first candle was lit from the embers of the smoking ceremony. For many, many years, there's been a very close relationship between the Aboriginal community and members of the Jewish community, and how could there not be? Even the mutual beginnings from the dust of the earth and our mutual love of the land have a familiar ring. To the support by many Jewish lawyers who worked for the return of Aboriginal lands and the community fundraising for grants for training Aboriginal doctors here and in Israel. And lately, the $1 million Gandal philanthropy grant to support Aboriginal students at Monash University to become change makers in their own communities and advancement. The Jewish community fully supports the statements of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and would like to see this advance, as others have expressed, even before any further discussion of a republic, as without real respect and support for our First Nation people, a republic would be meaningless. Our petition was signed by over 14,000 people and was sent in December to the Prime Minister with a request of a formal handover. We have yet to receive a reply. Thank you.
I'm Peter Danaher, and I'm the Chairman and Leader of the Victorian Council of Churches as their President. I acknowledge that we stand on holy land and that I acknowledge the elders of the tradition, both present, future, and who are emerging. It is a great privilege to be able to come together with people from that backgrounds and to express this faith. Victorian Council of Churches has 29 church members, and we are very proud of the fact that we can speak on behalf of the church on many occasions. I find it almost unbearably difficult to think about this situation that we have before us. The statement from the heart, a powerful, powerful sentence, the statement from the heart. But before we even get there, my anger, my confusion, my fed-upness is directed at the Prime Minister. I find it hard to believe that this document is not some great academic, difficult work. You can read it in an evening. You don't have to have it bound or put together as a special report or anything else. But you do need to take it, Prime Minister, and read it, but not chuck it in the bin, as the expression was used about what did happen when this document was made to the Prime Minister. Mind you, it depends which Prime Minister. I get confused about that as well. It seems to me that there's a wonderful image that we can create, and that image is the difference between the statement from the heart and a culture that doesn't care. I have been to Uluru and was overwhelmed by it. The most extraordinary, massive structure, this wonderful place, and the light that changed on it night and day, enough to make us all aware of the beauty and wonder of such an extraordinary thing as Uluru the Rock. I was also pondering upon this and thinking to myself, how do we compare what's happened with this statement from the heart and the response to it? And it occurs to me that there are two quite distinct cultures. One culture is the culture of greed and selfishness, of being frightened all the time, being aware that, the decisions that are made, they might have an effect on somebody. A culture that doesn't really care for the people, but rather cares for their own well-being and their own situations. And on the other hand, the great rock, that wonderful, marvellous structure beyond all human understanding. We were there and we were overwhelmed. But I was horrified as well, for there were people who wanted to climb the rock. There are people who wanted to climb the rock and then urinate on it. And these people were taking off and going up the side of the rock, and there was a chain put in place so that they could help themselves get up the rock. I believe that that chain and structure has been removed and people are not allowed to go up the rock. There is this other picture of the rock which you gain by walking around it. We did that with somebody who was willing to come with us and tell us about it. Tell us what the rock meant. Tell us something about the beauty and wonder of the rock. And it is indeed the heart of the nation. It's right there in the middle. There are wonderful prayers written about the rock standing at the middle of our hearts. So these two different cultures. What I want to do is to ask you to go again to the Prime Minister, to use the material that Philip has just given us, and to go and see the Prime Minister again, if he'll see us. But we need not to let this slip. We need to take hold of it, and we need to make it something that we can do, that together, uniting churches and faith communities, asking the Prime Minister and his government to take this matter seriously. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be with you all. My name is Tris Madhyastuti. I'm here today. You can't hear? Sorry. My name is Tris Madhyastuti. I'm here as a representative from Islamic Council of Victoria. Before I begin, I would like to ask everyone to please just take a few seconds of silence to close our eyes and renew our intentions why we all gather here this afternoon. With sincerity in our heart, we try to put everything behind us so then our heart can be connected beyond faith, beyond gender, beyond language, and beyond ethnicity. Thank you. With this, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, where we meet today and pay respect to elders past, present, and future. This is the land of the indigenous people. As Muslims, we believe this land belongs to Australia First Nation people, and it will always be their land. It is our responsibility to look after the common good, no matter where we come from and which ethnicity we belong to. I would like to say a short prayer from our Holy Quran. O humankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes, that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you. Indeed, Allah is knowing and acquainted. Surah Al-Hujurat, Ayah 13. In Islamic way, we are created from a single pair, male and female, and made into nations and tribes that are supposed to live harmony side by side, not to despise each other. The word piety for us means equal justice. We need to communicate the message of peace and social justice beyond our gender, beyond our skin color, and beyond our faith. We cannot continue living in this beautiful country, ignoring that there is an injustice, an oppression that has befallen to our fellow brothers and sisters. It is the time for all of us to embrace each other, to feel that we all are one nation. The Islamic Council of Victoria had the great pleasure in signing an accord with the National Congress of Australia's First People on Sunday, 18 November last year. The accord is an agreement by the Islamic Council of Victoria to support Congress as an organization and also to support a set of key objectives and principles. These include promoting the domestic implementation of the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous people. The recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples in the Australian Constitution include the National Anti-Racism Strategy and further partnership work as negotiated and agreed to by the two parties. And with this, from the humble of my heart, we hope that we can just work together, different faith. And I'd like to end with thanking the organizers of today's event and all of you wonderful people who have gathered here in support of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Good afternoon and namaste. My name is Makarand Bhagwat, and I represent here Hindu Council of Australia, the Victorian chapter. First of all, I also acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, respect them, also respect the leaders, past, future, and of course, emerging. I also thank Helen for giving an opportunity to come and speak here. I have not prepared any speech, but I have read this statement a few times, the statement from the heart, and I can certainly say it does touch your heart. At this stage, the wider Hindu community, and maybe predominantly Indian community, is not aware of the issues faced by the traditional owners of this land. The migration from India has increased, especially in the recent past. A lot of young families have come to Victoria and other cities in the country. Those who are in Victoria, living here from the Hindu and the Indian background, have a very little, or I would say nil, exposure to any traditional owners of this land. On behalf of Hindu Council of Australia and its partner organizations, we definitely support the Uluru Statement from the Heart. One of the sentences here in this statement really strikes a chord, not only with me, but it might strike a chord with other Hindu and ethnic Indian nationals who are living here. It says, how could it be otherwise that peoples possessed a land for 60 millennia and this sacred link disappears from the world history in merely the last 200 years? I was pondering on this particular line for some time, and the reason it strikes a chord with me, and I'm sure it will strike a chord with other Indians, Hindus as well, is India, or Bharat, as it used to be called, has also witnessed the invasion from the West for over 700 years. And then another invasion, or occupation, I must say, for another 400 years. We have come out of that successfully, and now marching towards becoming a respectable and successful nation in the map of the world. The only thing which held us together, and which again says here, is a spiritual notion. Even if the wider population back in India was divided based on their individual languages, their food, they were all united by one single Hindu religion. I believe the unity within the Aboriginal community, based on their spiritual notions, will certainly give them a lot of strength in coming out successfully with this request to seek the constitutional reform to empower their people. And it rightly says, to educate the people, to bring them in the forefront. That is the most important task I think we have in our own hands. We haven't started doing anything yet, but reading this and letting the other community organizations know within the Hindu community, I'm sure there should be a lot of ideas coming from other organizations where we can come forward and help the community, Aboriginal community here. Thank you for having me here. Thank you. Namaste.
Good afternoon, and I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and their elders past, present and emerging. It's a great honour to be here today representing the Buddhist Council of Victoria. I welcome the Uluru Statement from the Heart and feel great joy that we have the opportunity to listen to our First Nations peoples and to respond to their invitation to engage in truth-telling and witness. Let it begin. There can be no justification for denying this voice, including the proposed voice to Parliament. Wearing another hat, I represented the organisation PEN Melbourne at the PEN International Congress in Pune, India last year. PEN is the organisation supporting writers in prison. One of the resolutions of the International Congress was in support of the Statement from the Heart. A part of this resolution read, PEN International bears witness to the continuing exclusion of the voices of Indigenous Australia from the government and legislative bodies of the Australian nation, and notes that this exclusion does incalculable harm in disadvantaging Indigenous Australians in matters of education, justice, employment, welfare, and social and political participation. Furthermore, this exclusion deprives public discussion and parliamentary debate of an essential and fundamental element, the voice and voices of the First Nations peoples of Australia on laws that will affect them. Our failure to see and hear the Indigenous community is our collective loss. There are great wisdom traditions held within this community, and yet we imprison their young and turn our backs on their elders. As Buddhists, we can find no philosophical basis to support racial discrimination. On the contrary, our prayers always include aspirations for the welfare of all beings, human, insect, and animal included. One of the most famous is the prayer of the four immeasurables, and these are immeasurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The prayer says, may all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be free of suffering, may all beings have equanimity towards each other. And this is our great aspiration, that no one is rejected or excluded from the wish for happiness and the freedom from suffering, and that we treat each other equally. In various forms of Buddhist visualization, we imagine removing the pain and suffering from known individuals and then extend that visualization to whole communities, countries, and the planet. If we actually lived from within those principles, then we would find it impossible to perpetuate the racial discrimination and cruelty which typify the treatment of Indigenous people in Australia. These are the most imprisoned people on the planet, and in many areas they are dispossessed from their land and deprived of basic support, sometimes including fresh food, housing, and medicine. But we have an aspiration. As Buddhists, we aspire to live the four immeasurables, and as Australians, we can aspire to establish the Makarand Commission and a First Nations voice in Parliament. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to one and all. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, My name is Jaspreet Singh on behalf of the Sikh Interfaith Council of Victoria. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today and pay my respect to past, present, and future generation of the Indigenous, Aboriginal people and Pacific Islanders. Now, this is the first meeting that I can remember I am attending from the interfaith perspective. And I think, as you have here, Mr. Makarand have mentioned, many of the migrants and the whole community that is coming to Australia, they get a lot of settlement programs to know about Australia, where to get settling, what to Australian culture, so on and so forth. But nowhere are they told about the Indigenous people and their story. And I would say to use the word genocide of the Indigenous people. Why it resonates well with us in a bad way, in a good way, is that in 1984, Sikhs were massacred in a government orchestrated genocide in Delhi. Just no reason for whatever happened, political sin, you prosecute a person, but the whole community was prosecuted by mass killing, identified and killed, raped, looted, and burnt alive. And until today, it's 33 years, no justice. It will never happen because it's all washed under the carpet. Nobody wants to talk about it. And when you speak about it, they classify you as a terrorist because you speak the truth. So we can feel the pain, and I've heard few other elders speak at different settings. And at one of the settings, when they describe how the children were stolen, and it was this elder who mentioned they were told that the white people are coming and they were hiding below and shivering. And she said, how my mother hid me under the ground soil, and I got taken away, and my mother got taken away and I was left. And the description of how they were raped and then forced to hold the pregnancy and give birth to finish that lineage, finish that cultural links, the heritage. It is one of the worst evil things we can do to a community. So we feel their pain, but many of the Sikh community people are not aware of this because they come in, immediately they have to find work, put food on the table, they go to work, build houses, and that's it. They are lost in their own little world and the place of worship. And after reading the statement, the Uluru statement from the heart, it is very touching. And definitely the Sikh community do support this. And I was speaking to Helen that going forward, we are hoping that some form of information can be set up within our places of worship, or even invite speakers on certain days to just talk, and so that people can be more aware of what is going on. Our Sikh faith, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, the founder of the Sikh faith, in 1469, he came and he spoke to every faith, every religion, basically humanity. And he spoke about God within. Whether we are believers or not believers, we need to see the source of the supreme source within everyone. And all of us come from the same source. And all of us have the same capabilities that is given to us by God. Or you can call him Allah or Ram or Jesus, whatever name you call him. It's still one. There's many names, but still one name. It's one source. And that same source is all about love. God is about love. The Guru says, Jin prem kiyo, ten hi prabha payo. He who has love has attained God. And we are taught to see God in all. And if we can't see God in all, we can't see God at all. We don't have to pretend and, like me being a hypocrite and say, oh yeah, I'm religious, but you don't see the God in others. Beyond this color of the skin and beyond this garb that we wear. We have to see God within. And then we can resonate the pain of another fellow human being. So much so, today is the birthday of our sixth Guru, Guru Harkrishan Sahib Maharaj. Sorry, seventh Guru, my mistake. Sri Guru Harkrishan Sahib And when he was young, he plucked a little flower, and his grandfather told him, be careful. You have the power to pluck, but do not realize that this flower doesn't have the power to stop you from plucking. You must be considerate. That means to help communities or individuals that are marginalized, who have no power, to help anyone. So much so he started a veterinary clinic to help wild animals within the jungle, nursing them, and opened free hospitals and clinics to treat anyone, regardless of race and religion, to start this concept of humanity, which was planted by Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So for the Sikh community, any community, we are supposed to speak out against injustice. That's our basis. And that's why we always get into trouble, especially in India. If you really go into India and find the details and walk the streets, it's different. Just like any other country on the top, everything looks different, but when you walk the streets, it's different. And that's the truth of it. So when we speak out, and we speak out for many communities, and recently I think they had a little convention for the Burmese who were killed in Burma. They were there, speaking out and protesting, standing with the others. No relationship. They had turban, they had no turban. But why? The human aspect of it. So I can say that we are very lack of knowledge in this area, at least my community. Maybe some have the more knowledge than me, we don't know, but this is not much talked about. So involving the faith community, I think, is a great move to get this conversation going within community, and I'm so happy to see the Muslims, and even my Hindu brothers, they're beginning to create this awareness, and even the Buddhists, which is good. Now, of course, the Christians are already way ahead in doing a lot of things. So for us, we're a small community growing, and now it's just a second or third generation coming up. So they're still not aware of many other things about Australia. You know how people from Asia are, they're very hardworking. You work home, build house, and that's it. A lot of money in the bank, but you've got to move and mix with society. So on our part, I can't say much. All I can say is the more you read about it, and when I heard that story, I was literally in tears that this happened in Australia not far away, not long ago. And how they mentioned which year they were acknowledged, and Prime Minister Kevin Rudd gave the apology. So these are present things which are happening in our today present modern world, so-called the developed countries. It's sad. Nobody is bad according to their, whatever people were there, they did what they did. But I think we have the power, we have the love, we have the ability to start the conversation and slowly create the ground so that it goes to the people who are making the law and the legislation to start recognizing them. Hey, it's their home. And there's no two ways about it. There's history, there's facts, there's proof. So why not acknowledge them and be thankful? Because we believe Mother Earth looks after us. And, just like they are people of the land, we believe we are also people of the land, because we believe Pavan Guru, Pani Pita. You see, the air, Father, the land, the sea, all these look after us. So we need to be respectful of that. So I don't have much to say on this, I'll be very honest. This is because the rest, if we are from faith leaders, we'll be talking a lot about faith. I don't want to do that. So we just want to be honest that this is a good thing. We need to have more conversation within our community. And before coming, I spoke to, we have a Gurdwara Council, which is an embodiment of 5 Sikh places of worship called Gurdwaras. And I spoke to the secretary. I said, I'm going for this forum to talk about this. Do you think there's something we can do to put up some notice or some acknowledgement? And Helen told me they have created a pull-up poster, which is out there, red color. So, and he said, yeah, we can have it, and we are hopefully putting it as the next agenda at our meeting. And they will, most probably, I can hear from his conversation this morning, very positive. Yeah, this is something, we never thought about it. So it's not that we don't want to support. We never thought about it because we are so busy with our own issues that we are facing. Because you can see from the outlook, we face our own discrimination just by walking the streets sometime, just because we look different. So we understand, we feel the pain. And I think as all humans, we should feel every human's pain and give a shoulder and spread the love so that the pain can disappear and everybody can live in harmony. Thank you very much. God bless all.
Thank you, Helen. And it would be amiss if we, as a group of people, didn't thank Helen for the effort and the work she does on behalf of the Interfaith community in Melbourne and for bringing this event together. We really do appreciate it, Helen. We know that you work very hard, that this is a passion, and we look forward, we at St Oswald's look forward to working with you and sharing that passion as we move forward. Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause. I stand with the comments today that if we cannot see God in the lives of those who stand in front of us, we cannot see God at all. If we do not have love for those who stand in front of us, we do not have love at all. And it is an important process that coming together like this allows us to share beautiful prayers. Thank you, your prayer was lovely, and I want a copy. Okay, Tris? Yes. I want a copy. We get to hear great history from Philip about our connections as communities through William Cooper. We like to thank the Victorian Council of Churches for just being the Victorian Council of Churches and for being there and giving us an umbrella under which to exist. Folks, thank you for coming. I'm going to give you some business cards in a minute because we from the Aboriginal community would love to work with your communities to develop and to understand and to educate. Your comments are true. I go to Swinburne University as part of their bridging program for Asian students. And they have no flame and idea at all. None whatsoever. And we spend 3 or 4 hours. And unfortunately, in their bridging program and their subsequent degree programs, they get 3 hours with me. Hey, you don't think that would be really good? I love it. But that's all they get. And we can't tell that story. And we do share the pain of your pain and the pain of the other cultures in the various different ways. Genocide's the right word. The Aboriginal community, from where I came, I don't come from the traditional Aboriginal people in the area that I came from because there was no single tribal Aboriginal in existence, left in existence after 1876. Genocide had occurred. My grandmother was part of a blacks camp, a gathering of Aboriginal people who had moved around when other people got sick of them. But genocide, became completely sterile of Aboriginal people. We thank you for coming. We thank you for your hearts. We thank you that you share them with us. We have a couple of things. The book, A Voice in the Wilderness, Listening to the Statement of Heart, written by a Celia Kemp, who lives in Alice Springs, and illustrated by an artist that you may know. I think it's a beautiful book.
So do we.
Thank you, Philip. But these are for sale, and while they are in the Christian tradition, you would be able to read them and adapt them and take them to the God that you love, and through the love of the God that you love. So we would ask, there are going to be some for sale out there afterwards, and you can come and purchase them off me. The other thing is we have a copy of the Statement of the Heart, which I'm now going to, it's on here. Could you reach behind you? Sure. Thank you. We have a copy of the Statement of the Heart on a piece of board. I'm going to ask our representatives of the communities to sign it around here, and we'll keep that in the office as in remembrance of the day that we had here. But there's another one of these in the room where you go to have afternoon tea. Please sign that, and we will then, we've got about 7 or 8 others that have been signed over the last 12 months. We'll then place them in a display that where people can see. Do you know there was a news report this week that said 80% of voting Australians agree with Aboriginal people having a voice to Parliament? Yay. What's wrong with our Prime Minister, whichever one it is?
Just wait.
Just wait. We'll get another one. Okay. Now you're working on young Bill for us, are you? We hope so. We want you to join us for afternoon tea. And on the other side is there an Indigenous garden, the Womanjika Reconciliation Garden. It is where we can go for a walk, and I'll meet you out there and we can have a talk. But it's a reconciliation garden, not just for Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people, but for all of our cultures, for all of the things that we need to mend with each other. It's a place where we can all come and be one. It's a safe place. And we invite you to come and see us. We run education programs there, so you can bring your groups and your communities and your students, and we will talk to them about these issues. So once again, thank you for coming. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and I look forward to doing more of these, and I look forward to getting to know you and your communities. Thank you.